Why am I hearing Cooper Kupp to the Lions? That makes no sense.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, it is a Wednesday edition of Locked On Lions. Everybody on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Matt Derry with you. Today is Wednesday, February 5th into Thursday, February 6th. Thanks for making us your first listen, everybody, and checking us out wherever you get your podcast. Thank you to our everydayers that are out there that watch and listen to the podcast daily. My man, Jeff Risdon from the Lions Wire is going to join us momentarily, lionswire.com. Daily Lions news that is fantastic. I've told you all the beat writers do a great job. Jeremy and Eric and the folks at Pride of Detroit are great. I'm always reading Jeff Risdon stuff at Lions Wire as well. Want to recap the Senior Bowl because Jeff was there in Mobile last week. We had Brett Whitefield on last Friday, but we got to have Jeff on today, recap the game as well, and to get his thoughts on the draft, which is coming up in 2 months? 2+ months. I'm excited for the draft. The Lions, of course, will be picking number 28 if they hold on to that pick. We've been talking about Myles Garrett the last couple of days. Locked On Lions today brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Before we get to Jeff Risdon and talk all things draft and Senior Bowl and get his thoughts too on the Lions, because we haven't had Jeff on since the end of the season, I saw a report today from ESPN and Jeremy Fowler at ESPN.com in their Insider segment talking about Cooper Kupp, the fantastic wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams, who has been told by the Rams they're going to be trading him. Kupp said he wanted to finish his career in LA, loves LA, everything else. But Cooper Kupp's days are done. Jeremy Fowler, ESPN insider on SportsCenter this morning, said, quote, as far as early teams that people are bantering about with Kupp, Steelers looked into Cooper Kupp at the trade deadline last season. They still have a need there. Washington could look for a compliment to Terry McLaurin. The Patriots would be foolish not to at least check in on this, given their receiver position or situation. And here are a few surprises for you. Detroit Lions. Jared Goff came into the league with Cooper Kupp. That's instant chemistry. And then doesn't this feel like a Kansas City Chiefs move a little bit? End quote. Cooper Kupp, isn't Cooper Kupp Amon-Ra St. Brown? Why would the Lions want, look, Cooper Kupp is excellent. He's a Pro Bowler. He's a great receiver. He and Puka Nacua were awesome the last couple of years with the Rams. But the reason the Rams are trading him is because they want to get out from underneath his contract. That's a $20 million cap hit next year for a wide receiver turning 32. And he's not even the best receiver on their team anymore. Puka Nacua is. Kupp was dominant a couple of years ago. He's had good years since, including kind of an off year last year or 2 years ago. 2023. 2024 was a better year for Cooper Kupp, but this is not the Kupp from 2022. And you're going to have to pay him $20 million next year, or at least the cap hit is $20 million. And then the year after, it's the same thing. The Detroit Lions right now, yes, Amon-Ra St. Brown is there. Jamison Williams, they have to decide if they're going to pick up his fifth-year option, but he's back next year. Tim Patrick, you have to figure, was a guy on a bargain basement deal last year that did a really nice job at the number 3 receiver spot. And you know, Dan Campbell's favorite guy is Khalif Raymond. I don't see room for Cooper Kupp. I know Fowler is just speculating and saying, hey, look, there's a relationship there. Kupp was with the Rams. Brad Holmes was with the Rams. Jared Goff was with the Rams. I get all that. But I see no reason why we even need to have this discussion about Kupp to the Lions. You're asking to pay a pair of receivers, St. Brown and Kupp, over $20 million. And you got J-Mo coming up in a couple of years. If we're going to be talking about trading for players, it's on defense. And it's Myles Garrett, like we've been talking about the last 2 days. And oh, by the way, Charles Robinson at Yahoo Sports down at the Super Bowl reported yesterday, he does not think the Browns are trading Garrett. He thinks the Browns are going to dig in and say no to his demand to be traded and that he's not going to be going anywhere. But Cooper Kupp, love him as a player. He lit up the Lions in the playoffs and everything else last year and has had good seasons and is an awesome slot receiver. But I don't see a scenario where the Lions are going to be trading for more wide receivers. Could they draft a receiver this year to replace Tim Patrick if he leaves in free agency? Sure. Should they have a backup plan in case they don't want to pick up J-Mo's fifth-year option, which is possible? I would say it's more probable that he stays, but I'm not trading for a 32-year-old receiver who's going to be hitting your cap for $20 million the next 2 seasons. We'll ask Jeff Risdon about this coming up next as well and get his thoughts on the Lions, the draft. He was down at the Senior Bowl. Jeff Risdon from the Lions Wire coming up next right here on Locked On Lions. But hey, Locked On Lions brought to you by Gametime. Looking for tickets for the next big event? What about last-minute tickets to the big game this weekend? Whether it's a concert, comedy show, sporting event, whatever. Heck, you want to go down and see Pistons Cavs tonight? Get your tickets on Gametime. With Gametime Picks, it's never been easier because let me tell you how this works. With Gametime Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. My favorite thing is the seat view feature. It's a game changer. Before I even hit buy on my app, I can see exactly where my seat is and what it would look like in the venue. And it is very, very reassuring. The best part, you're covered with Gametime's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Ready to make your next event even better? Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back. Locked On Lions for a Wednesday. Jeff Risdon, managing editor of the Lions Wire and Draft Wire, joins us on the program today. JR, great to see you.
Good. Thanks for having me on, man. It's good to be back with you.
I know. Always a pleasure. I want to get to the Senior Bowl and everything else, but first off, obviously the Lions season ended prematurely. The fans can't believe it and everything else, but how would you kind of characterize this 15-3, I guess, season for this team?
There's no other way to say it than it's disappointing, even though it's an incredible time. It ended too soon. The ride was incredible. They did everything that they needed to do to get the number 1 seed, and then the injuries just – you can't – when you've got that many people with that importance level on your team on the injured reserve, it's tough to win. And, Washington played a great game. Just it was frustrating. And, just now losing the coordinators right afterwards. Especially with Ben Johnson having a full staff, like kind of planned out the next day, that was tough to take. But I think in time, maybe not next year, but in like 2 or 3 years, I think we'll look back and like, damn, man, that was a really fun season, and it was a really good year. And I hope that we all come to that soon, hopefully in the next year when we're playing in this game that's coming up Sunday.
I love when they show the coaches that were on staffs many, many years ago, and you look up and you go, oh, wait, wow, Mike Holmgren's staff had Andy Reid and John Gruden and all these guys. I think we might look back on that Lions staff from this year, too, and last year and say the same thing.
No, for real. And, I think – fingers for think they're done moving out this year. We still got a few to backfill, but it's the thing that Dan Campbell has done here in creating a coaching culture and coaching the coaches, which I think is a complete foreign concept to pretty much all of his predecessors in Detroit, going back to at least Wayne Fontes. It's special, man. And it's tough right now to realize that this team is really, really good and had an incredible 2-year run. Run's not anywhere close to being over. I think we're still going up, and it's a little tough to see that right now. But I think once we settle in and watch what happens Sunday in the Super Bowl, we'll be like, we can be there next year. We can be the year after that too. Probably the year after that too. Doesn't mean we will, but we certainly can.
Would not be bad. Jeff Risdon with us from the Lions Wire. I mentioned this before you came on. I get the Myles Garrett talk. That's a need for the Lions. Why not maybe go for it? But I saw Jeremy Fowler on SportsCenter today talk about Cooper Kupp and mentioned Detroit as a possibility. Why would the Lions add another $20 million wide receiver that basically is Amon-Ra St. Brown?
And he's also got a massive injury history. And if you watched him when he came back this year, he wasn't the same Cooper Kupp. He wasn't better than Tim Patrick was down the stretch for the Lions. And if you're going to overpay for a injury-prone veteran who catches balls on the outside, working over the middle, keep Tim Patrick. You don't need to pay for that. Other teams will. Green Bay can pay for that. Let them do it.
What do you think about the Myles Garrett chatter? Are you on board to go for it and make a move?
So it's tough. I freaking love Myles Garrett. He's my favorite player in the league. I just love the guy.
Oh, wow.
He's an incredible player, but he's also an incredible person. I mean, imagine showing up at the Museum of Natural History with your third grader on a field trip, and he's your docent taking you around. Like, he does that spontaneously. Like, he's an incredible guy, would be a perfect fit in any defense, but especially in the one that we think Kelvin Shepard's going to run in Detroit. But you got to pay him $50 million after you pay Hutchinson $35 to $40 million a year. Like, that's a 30-year cap right there. I mean, and then you're giving up at least 2 first-rounders. My guess on fishing around the Cleveland and Browns media is that it will take 2 firsts, 2 day 2 picks, and perhaps a player, and you'll probably get early day 3 or a late day 2 pick in return.
Wow.
That's given up a whole lot of everything that Brad Holmes preaches to build this team. So I would love it. I would love to have Myles Garrett, but it just doesn't seem feasible from a Lions standpoint, which, you know, and I understand that the want to go in all in. Like, I get that. And there's no better player to do it with, but I don't see the Lions doing it. And I think that preempts anything. I also don't think that the Browns are that anxious to really get rid of him. So, you know, it's fun to speculate, but probably not going to happen.
Draft wire as well as Lions wire for you, Jeff. So you're all over the draft. How'd the Senior Bowl go last week? What stands out as you got on the airplane to come home?
You know, it was a fun week. It was a lot of good offensive and defensive line talent is what really stood out, and the Lions happen to have some needs there. So, you know, just filtering around through who a scheme fits, finding guys, small school guys that I hadn't really watched much before, and I'm like, oh, I got to watch the tape. Gray Zabel from North Dakota State. He might be gone by the time the Lions pick. He was that good. And I'll say this, going back to my first year in Mobile for the Senior Bowl was 2009. They had a guy named Alex Mack as the center, who is probably going to the Hall of Fame someday. Gray Zabel was the best center I've seen there since him.
Wow.
This is the guy who's never played that position before. And he played tackle. He played a little bit of guard, but he was incredible. And finding guys like Darius Alexander at Toledo, defensive tackle, really fits what the Lions like. He's sort of Aleem McNeil light. He's not quite that dynamic, but he had a fantastic week down there. And, you know, as you know, I'm a Mac guy from forever. He tore up my Ohio Bobcats too, so I'm not too happy about that. But he's a guy that can really play. And Toledo puts dudes in the league that are ready. You saw that with Quinion Mitchell. You've seen it with a few other guys. He can go. So he's certainly an interesting one. But yeah, just that feeling. Linebackers were not great. I do think that if the Lions are in the market for a late round cornerback, mid round cornerback even, or a late round running back, you can find some guys down there. Fantastic tight end class too, which was nice to see. Not that the Lions are in the market for that. They have their top 2 locked up for a long time. But it's always good to see like where the strengths and the weaknesses are in the draft. And I will just tell you, it makes me very happy that the Lions have zero need for a quarterback this year, because this quarterback class is rough, dude.
Well, that's where I was going next, because it's always fun, even when we know the Lions quarterbacks are fine, unless the Lions are going to trade Hendon Hooker in a Myles Garrett trade. Don't put that past the Browns. But what about, where are you on this group? And obviously, you know, people think, oh, Shedeur to the Giants or Shedeur to the Browns, or is it Cam Ward, or even is it the kid from Ole Miss? But it doesn't seem like after that it's a big drop off, and there's questions about even the guys at the top, right?
Yeah, Shedeur is my number one, pretty handily too. I am morbidly fascinated to see what he's like away from his dad as his coach. His dad has been his coach since 8th grade. And I think that dynamic and how he handles that, I think he can thrive out of it. getting away and getting out from under the thumb and spreading his wings a little bit. I also wonder, though, that, Deion's not here. Like, do I have to list this guy? Like, that's a huge variable. Nobody's going to know how that goes until it happens. But yeah, he's going to be 1 or 2. Cam Ward, I'm lukewarm on him. He tries. One of the criticisms that we always have about Caleb Williams, and we like it now that he's in Chicago, is that he plays hero ball too much. Well, Cam Ward makes Caleb Williams look conservative on that point. And the arm talent is fine. It's not special. The processing speed is fine. It's not special. I worry for the team that takes him in the top 5, and he will absolutely go in the top 5. Then after that, Jalen Milroe played his way out of.
Oh, mercy!
He should have played his way out of the first 3 rounds. I don't know if that's going to happen, but his ball placement was so bad. Like, even just like routine throws when they're warming up, guys are having to reach down. It's never where and when it needs to be. Does throw the ball down the field incredibly well, but the short passes, like Ben Johnson offense has zero need for that. Any West Coast offense, like he won't make your team. So I think that Jackson Dart, in my mind, and a lot of other analysts' mind, moved ahead of him down there pretty definitively. But then again, you get a lot of people that are on Dart, and Mississippi's offense, basic, 1 read. If that read's gone, you either run or you have your 1 outlet, and that's it. Like that's your play.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of. I don't know. Again, it's a great year to not need a quarterback. And the Lions, unless they come completely out of left field and trade Hendon Hooker, and I don't think that they're looking in any way to trade him. I've heard quite the opposite, actually. Jake Fromm is number 3. I'm good with that. No more Tim Boyle, please.
Oh, that's a good. I remember we loved Mr. August back in the day, Tim Boyle. Jeff Risdon with us from the Lions Wire and the Draft Wire. Real fast, and then we'll get into some other stuff. But Jack Batch this weekend, and just really all week, but then the game on Saturday where he caught the touchdown pass, the tight end from TCU. There might not have been a better story all week than what this kid did, huh?
Yeah, going through the loss that he had off the field, and coming down there, he wasn't necessarily an early invite. He was sort of in the second wave. I just played his butt off, and he's not the best athlete. But there are some parallels there to what Cooper Kupp does as a bigger receiver who can work the middle, but also get open deep. And he was game MVP, caught the walk-off touchdown in the game. Very tearful situation. But he also, I will say, he and Jalen Milroe had a really nice connection on deep throws throughout the week in practice. So there's something there with him. And look, you're looking at a guy who's a 4th or a 5th round pick, probably. Maybe squeezes into where the Lions comp pick for Aaron Glenn is, which will be number 101 or 102 when they get announced in a couple of weeks. But just a fantastic. And those are the things that we go to the Senior Bowl for, to meet guys like that. I met a couple other guys who were like underdog stories that they're probably not going to get drafted, or if they do, it's day 3, probably not by Detroit. But just finding those guys and connecting and seeing how important it is for them, and getting that back stuff. That's why we love what we do, Matt. That's we enjoy the stories, but also getting to know the guys behind the stories. And Betch certainly had a great week and a great story.
Yep, tight end from TCU lost his brother in the attack in New Orleans over New Year's. And it was an awesome story for sure. All right, let's get Jeff's thoughts on the edges and the D tackles. We know Browns. We know the Lions. Well, the Browns need everything, but the Lions need that. And what did Jeff see down there? We will get into his head on that coming up next. But first, our friends at PrizePicks brings us Locked On Lions today. The big game is almost here. There's no better way to make it even more exciting than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, PrizePicks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's what you got to do. You pick more than or less than on at least 2 player stat projections, and if you're right, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Yes, PrizePicks even has a free pick for the big game, where Patrick Mahomes only has to throw 1 yard to win. Come on. Pair that with 1 more correct pick, and you are cashing out. Looking at the big board, right? Travis Kelce, receiving yards. Saquon Barkley, rushing yards. A.J. Brown, receiving yards. All those things you can throw money down on PrizePicks. Check out the promos tab to tail any of the super sweet Millie winners big game lineups. And if you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Read him in the at the Lions Wire and Draft Wire. Jeff Risdon, managing editor, joins us. Always love the Lions conversations we have with Jeff here on the podcast. All right, you've seen all these games. You've seen what the Lions need. There's questions about certainly if Onwuzurike comes back, how healthy will be Aleem McNeil and Aiden Hutchinson. Is Darius Smith going to come back with that contract? DJ Reader's contract's fat, and he didn't have a great year. How do you view the Lions D-line, and then what you saw, I guess, two parts, Jeff, at the Senior Bowl? Did something stand out to you that you went, oh, man, we got to run up the card for Mike Green at 28 or something like that?
That would be nice. There's a few guys who were down there that were good, but he certainly stood out, especially if they're looking to adapt the defense a little bit. And I think that's one of the things that we're going to see is, does Kelvin Shepard and the new defensive line coach, do they run the same system, or do they make a little bit of an adaptation to it? And do they run more 5-man line? Do they run more of a 3-4 set? The strength of this team is at linebacker and safety. You can kind of do that. Maybe get away with 3 linemen more. So we kind of have to see where they're looking, and I think what they do, quite frankly, will tell us what they're doing. The starting defensive line, other than Hutchinson, who should be great to go, I don't know who any of those guys are going to be. Reader and Smith, and I think Levi does come back, but you don't know that. Pascal is still here, but does he really a starter? There's a lot of questions there, so they certainly have to fill some things, and Look, Chris Smith is a nice depth piece. It would be great if Kyle Pecco could come back and be healthy, but we don't know any of that right now. So, yeah, you've got to get some dudes up front. I think defensive line, whether it's inside or outside, is the biggest need on the team going into the offseason based on free agency and everything else. So, yeah, there's Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. I think he should be a top 10 pick personally, but if he happens to fall, because he was a little bit of a late bloomer. He was a guy who was a 5-star recruit at Texas A&M. Didn't play very well early on. They finally stabilized the coaching and the system for him, and he was phenomenal, and he was the best player down in Mobile. He was better than Mike Green with it. Wow. He darn near took a handoff on a Statue of Liberty from Riley Leonard before Leonard got to the back of his drop. He was that quick around the edge at 292 pounds. Incredible specimen. He is. I said it to the people that I was on there with. He reminds me of Ndamukong Suh when Ndamukong Suh kicked outside back in the day in the Jim Schwartz defense. That's the kind of guy you're looking at. So he would be great. He'd be a guy I would trade up for. I don't know if the Lions will do that or not. Yeah, there were some trench guys down there. I brought up Alexander from Toledo. I'm trying to think. There's a couple other dudes. There's a guy from Nebraska, middle round pick, Ty Robinson. There's some things you can work with him if you're counting on Aleem McNeil coming back healthy by October, which I think is realistic. You're looking more for rotational guys. You're looking for a guy that can step up into that DJ Reader role or the number 3 defensive tackle role. He's a guy that can do that. There was a few guys down there that impressed in that way. So yeah, the trench battles down there were fantastic. By the way, Walter Nolan from Ole Miss is another one. Very good interior pressure, and he can actually stand up and float around a little bit, can play a little bit outside too. So he's a guy that I think is very realistic for the Lions at number 28 if they decide to go that way.
That's what I was just going to ask you. As we saw throughout the year, here's Onwuzurike playing some edge. The Brad Holmes loves the versatility, likes bigger guys that can play outside. Does that mean in your mind that a guy like Stewart is more of a Lions fit than Green, because Green is just undersized, but boy, he can get to the quarterback?
Yeah, Green was actually bigger than we thought he would be. He was 6'1" and 253. So he's bigger than what James Houston was by comparison, and certainly more explosive. And definitely had bendier. That rep he put on Josh Connerly, who's probably going to be a 2nd-round pick. He just threw the Oregon offensive tackle back. That. It's always cool when the entire stadium oohs, and that happened on that one. So Green. I would like for the Lions to want to have somebody like that, but in the last couple of years, they haven't wanted that. That's not what AG wanted. Will that be what Kelvin Shepard wants? I kind of hope so. To go back to the Jim Schwartz thing, have your flamethrower. Have a guy that worries people with their speed off the edge. Yeah, he can't play the run. Yeah, he's not gonna win inside more than once or twice a game. You need a guy that can really sizzle on that. And by the way, he's also a pretty good on perimeter swing passes, screens, things like that. He's aware. He's athletic. So Green was a lot of fun. Several of the people that I was down there with were just raving about how good he was and if he will be there at 28 or not. And that's a fair question. I kind of think he will be, but just because playing at Marshall, but then you go and you want to see how the small school guys do when they get a chance to play the big boys. Well, he played Ohio State. He was great against Ohio State. So I think that's going to keep him up there.
Final thing for Jeff Risdon, free agency obviously comes before the draft. We know what Brad Holmes' philosophy has been. There've been a lot of doubles, some triples, some singles, but he's not a home run hitter when it comes to free agency and spending yet. All right, here's a guy like Khalil Mack that certainly is going to want some money that could be a fit. How do you kind of view what do you think Brad will do?
I think some of it depends on who they're keeping internally. They have decisions to make on Carlton Davis, who I would love to have back. I thought he was one of the best corners in the league down the stretch. You got to make a decision on Levi. You got to make a decision on Iffy, who I don't think will be back based on some of the reaction that I got when they had to put him on IR a second time. That was kind of the last straw for a lot of people in that building. So I don't expect him back. But again, the decision has to be made. They have, what happens with Kevin Zeitler. I certainly would love to have him back. That answers a whole lot of problems up front. I've been told he's amenable to returning, and if he is going to play in 2025, it will be in Detroit, but that's talk. Let's see some action on it. And I think also you've got extensions coming up. You got to extend Kirby Joseph this offseason. You probably need to get a Hutchinson extension done sooner than later because the price is only going to go up. That's going to severely limit your ability to spend. And so I think they're going to be looking at like a number 3 wide receiver to replace Tim Patrick, preferably somebody with that kind of size. And it could be Tim Patrick. But again, that's a guy who's missed 4 of the last 6 seasons with injuries. You probably don't want to put all your eggs in that basket. There's a depth linebacker, perhaps, depending on what happens with Jalen Reeves-Maybin, who's another guy who could be a cut candidate. And if Rodrigo's going to be back, is Ben Neiman coming back? I think they'd actually like to keep him quite a bit. So the internal free agency is interests me more than what the outside is. I don't think they're going to sign anybody. They might not sign anybody who starts. And some of that is the fact that the starting 22, like we kind of know who they are already. They can certainly go to battle with what they've got now without any outside additions and still win the NFC North. I absolutely believe that. But it's about augmenting your depth, finding guys who maybe fall through the cracks a little bit through that first wave. Like I think the first couple of days of free agency are going to be really boring in Lions land. But then after that, you're going to see the second or third tier guys.
But you'll get full, if the Lions cut Glasgow, you'll get full credit because you were not saying you wanted him cut, but you said, hey guys, Mahogany had a really nice end of the season when he played. And guess what? Check out Graham's tape. It was not very good in the second half of the year.
He was quite literally the worst interior offensive lineman in the league from week 12 on. That's you can't count on him to start. If he wants to be the backup. By the way, one quick thing on this. A lot of people are projecting that the Lions need a center. Frank Ragnow is an all-pro, and he has said it repeatedly. He's never felt better. Check out some mocks that are out there.
Really?
I won't point you to them, but there's a lot of people that think that center is a big need. Folks, they don't even need a backup center with Glasgow stays on the end. By the way, Michael Neese is not a bad center, and Kingsley Aguakun has some promise. That might be the last position on offense that they need to draft. So when you see a mock draft that has them taking a center, especially on day 2 or day 1 even, you probably ignore it.
Jeff, great to see you. Thanks so much for the time, and always appreciate it.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Jeff Risdon with us, lionswire.com, DraftWire. Check out all of his stuff on a Wednesday. Locked On Lions.
All right.